Terror on the rails, the Jaffa Express hijacking. On March 11, 2025, tragedy struck the Pakistani province of Balochistan. The Jaffa Express, a passenger train traveling from Quetta to Peshawar, was hijacked. The Balochistan Liberation Army, a separatist group, claimed responsibility for the attack. The hijacking occurred near Sibi, a city in Balochistan. The train was carrying over 400 passengers at the time of the attack. The hijackers used explosives to derail the train. Heavily armed, they stormed the carriages, taking passengers and crew hostage. The BLA immediately issued a set of demands to the Pakistani government. They wanted the release of Balochistan political prisoners. The group also set a 48-hour deadline for their demands to be met. The hijacking sent shockwaves through Pakistan and the international community. The incident highlighted the ongoing instability and violence that has plagued Balochistan for decades. It also raised serious concerns about the capabilities of the BLA and the government's ability to deal with the group. The world watched with bated breath as the tense hostage situation unfolded. The BLA, in their communication after the hijacking, made their demands clear. They demanded the immediate release of all Balochistan political prisoners held by the Pakistani government. These prisoners, according to the BLA, were being held illegally and subjected to torture and unfair trials. The group saw the hijacking as a way to bring attention to their plight and force the government's hand. Adding to the tension, the BLA set a tight deadline of 48 hours for their demands to be met. Failure to comply, they warned, would have dire consequences. They threatened to harm the hostages if their demands were not met within the stipulated time. The ultimatum put immense pressure on the Pakistani government, forcing them to navigate a delicate and dangerous situation. The BLA's demands were not made in a vacuum. They were rooted in the long-standing grievances of the Balochistan people. The Balochistan province, despite being rich in natural resources, has remained underdeveloped and marginalized. The Balochistan people have long accused the Pakistani government of exploitation and discrimination. The demand for the release of political prisoners was thus a manifestation of this deeper conflict. The hijacking of the Jaffa Express resulted in a tragic loss of life. While exact numbers are still being confirmed, initial reports suggest a significant number of casualties. Pakistani security forces launched a rescue operation soon after the hijacking. They surrounded the train and engaged in a standoff with the hijackers. The BLA, in their official statements, claimed to have killed several security personnel during the initial takeover and subsequent standoff. They also claimed to be holding a number of security personnel hostage. The group, however, maintained that they had no intention of harming the civilian hostages. Pakistani security forces, in their attempts to end the standoff peacefully, engaged in negotiations with the hijackers. They also launched a rescue operation, aiming to free the hostages and neutralize the hijackers. The operation, however, was fraught with risk, as the BLA threatened to harm the hostages if any attempts were made to retake the train by force. The situation remained tense, with the lives of hundreds of innocent passengers hanging in the balance. The government's response. The Pakistani government condemned the hijacking as a barbaric act of terrorism. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif addressed the nation, vowing to hold the perpetrators accountable. He also assured the families of the hostages that the government was doing everything in its power to secure their safe release. The government declared a state of emergency in the province. Hospitals were put on high alert, and additional security personnel were deployed to sensitive areas. The government also established a crisis management cell to coordinate the rescue operation and provide updates to the public. The hijacking of the Jaffa Express presented a significant challenge to the Pakistani government. It exposed the vulnerabilities of the country's rail network and the ongoing threat posed by separatist groups in Balochistan. The government's response, while swift, faced criticism from some quarters who felt that not enough was being done to address the root causes of the conflict in Balochistan. The Balochistan conflict, a history of grievances. The hijacking of the Jaffa Express is the latest chapter in the long-running Balochistan conflict. Balochistan, Pakistan's largest province by area, is also its least developed. It is rich in natural resources including natural gas, coal, and minerals, but the local population has often accused the federal government of exploiting these resources without adequately sharing the benefits. This sense of economic deprivation is compounded by a perceived lack of political representation and cultural suppression. The Balok people have their own distinct language and culture, which they feel is under threat from the Pakistani state. This has led to a sense of alienation and resentment, fueling the separatist movement. Over the years, there have been several uprisings and armed insurgencies in Balochistan. The BLA, formed in the early 2000s, is one of the most prominent separatist groups operating in the province. The group has carried out numerous attacks on security forces and government installations, demanding independence for Balochistan. Escalation of violence in Balochistan. The hijacking of the Jafar Express marks a significant escalation in the Balochistan conflict. It comes amidst a surge in violence in the province, with both separatist groups and the Pakistani security forces stepping up their operations. In recent months, there have been several attacks on security forces, as well as targeted killings of pro-government figures. The Pakistani government has responded with force, launching military operations against suspected militant hideouts. However, these operations have often resulted in civilian casualties, further alienating the local population and fueling the cycle of violence. The escalating violence in Balochistan has raised concerns about the security situation in the entire region. The province shares borders with Afghanistan and Iran, and there are fears that the conflict could spill over into these neighboring countries. The presence of foreign powers, including China, with its significant investments in the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC, which runs through Balochistan, adds another layer of complexity to the conflict. What lies ahead? The hijacking of the Jafar Express is a stark reminder of the challenges facing Pakistan. It highlights the ongoing threat posed by separatist groups and the volatile security situation in Balochistan. The incident also underscores the need for a political solution to the Balochistan conflict. The Pakistani government faces a difficult task. It needs to address the legitimate grievances of the Balok people while also ensuring the security of the province and the country as a whole. Military operations alone are unlikely to bring peace to Balochistan. A sustainable solution requires a multi-pronged approach that includes political dialogue, economic development, and social reforms. The international community also has a role to play in resolving the Balochistan conflict. Foreign powers with influence over Pakistan, such as China and the United States, should use their leverage to encourage all parties to engage in dialogue and work towards a peaceful resolution. The people of Balochistan deserve a future free from violence and fear. Only through dialogue and reconciliation can lasting peace be achieved in this troubled region.